John Wayne Gacy, a name etched in the darkest corners of American history. He was the jovial neighbor, the friendly clown at children's parties. Gacy wore a mask of normalcy, blending into the tapestry of suburban life. He was active in his community, even being photographed with First Lady Rosalind Carter. No one suspected the horrors that lurked beneath the surface. Behind the facade of the seemingly ordinary man, a monster was taking shape. Gacy's story is a jarring reminder that evil often hides in plain sight. He reminds us that appearances can be deceiving. Evil doesn't always announce itself with a menacing grin and a sinister laugh. Sometimes it lurks behind friendly eyes and a disarming smile. It's a stark and unsettling truth that continues to haunt us today. The tale of John Wayne Gacy is not for the faint of heart. It's a chilling descent into the depths of human depravity, a journey through the mind of a predator who shattered the lives of countless families. His crimes shocked the nation, leaving an indelible scar on the American psyche. His case remains one of the most disturbing in criminal history. This is the story of a man who epitomized the term serial killer. It's a story of unspeakable acts, a story of a community blindsided, and a story of the enduring power of evil to leave its mark on the world. This is the chilling story of John Wayne Gacy. Born in Chicago in 1942, Gacy's early life was marked by a troubled upbringing. His story is a complex tapestry woven with threads of abuse, neglect, and a desperate yearning for acceptance. His path to becoming a monster was paved with the darkest experiences, twisting his psyche and setting him on a collision course with destiny. But how did this seemingly ordinary man become a ruthless killer? What forces molded him into the monster that terrorized a nation? The answers lie buried in his past, hidden in the shadows of a troubled childhood and a life spiraling out of control. To understand the monster, we must first understand the man. We must delve into the darkest recesses of his past, uncovering the roots of his depravity. We must examine the events that shaped him, the traumas that haunted him, and the twisted desires that consumed him. Join us now as we embark on a journey into the heart of darkness. Prepare yourself, for the truth is far more terrifying than any fiction. This is the story of John Wayne Gacy, told in all its chilling detail.
My father, John Sr., was an auto repair machinist and a World War I veteran. Life at home was far from idyllic. He was known for his explosive temper and abusive behavior.
Young John bore the brunt of his father's volatile nature. He was often belittled and physically abused. School offered little respite from the turmoil at home. His struggles made him an easy target for bullies. He withdrew into himself, finding solace in solitary activities. Gacy was a Boy Scout, his dedication earning him the rank of Star Scout. These glimpses of normalcy masked the growing darkness beneath the surface.
As I entered adolescence, my yearning for acceptance intensified. I craved companionship, longing to shed the label of outsider.
Gacy's teenage years were marked by a growing fascination with death and violence. He became fixated on news reports of murders. He began to experience disturbing fantasies. Desperate to escape, Gacy left Chicago for Las Vegas. He took a job as a mortuary attendant. However, Gacy's demons followed him to Vegas. He enrolled in business college in Chicago. He married his first wife, Marlyn Myers, in 1964. It seemed as if Gacy was finally stepping into the role he had always craved. Section 3, the first cracks. Gacy's facade began to crack with the emergence of his repressed homosexuality. His erratic behavior led to his first arrest in 1968 for the sexual assault of a teenage boy.
This incident shattered the illusion of normalcy. My marriage crumbled and my wife filed for divorce. I was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Gacy was a master manipulator, presenting an image of remorse. After serving just 18 months, I was granted parole in 1970. I returned to Chicago determined to rebuild my life. I remarried in 1972 to Carol Hoff. Gacy created Pogo the Clown, entertaining at children's parties, but the darkness had not been extinguished, waiting to resurface. January 3rd, 1972. The snow fell silently on Chicago, blanketing the city in a deceptive calm. For one family, it marked the beginning of an unimaginable nightmare. Timothy McCoy, a bright-eyed 15-year-old, was on his way home from Michigan. He was due to arrive at Chicago's Greyhound bus station.
Timothy never made it home. His family, frantic with worry, contacted the authorities. The police began to suspect foul play.
Unbeknownst to them, John Wayne Gacy harbored a sinister secret within his unassuming ranch house. On that fateful night, Gacy crossed paths with Timothy at the Greyhound station. He lured the unsuspecting teenager, promising him a place to stay. Gacy drove Timothy back to his house, where his life would tragically end. A gruesome discovery at 8213 Summerdale. Years later, the full horror of what transpired at 8213 Summerdale Avenue would come to light. On that snowy January night, the house held its secrets close. Timothy McCoy vanished without a trace. The house, a symbol of suburban comfort, was about to become synonymous with horror. The crawl space would become a tomb. The investigation continued, but the police found no substantial leads. Gacy, hiding in plain sight, continued his life of normalcy. Families of other missing boys clung to hope. Authorities continued to search for answers, unaware of Gacy's true depravity.
As months turned into years, my gruesome secret festered within the walls of 8213 Summerdale Avenue. My thirst for control and domination grew stronger with each passing day. Timothy McCoy was not to be my only victim.
Gacy's modus operandi became chillingly routine. He would target young boys, often runaways or those estranged from their families.
I used my charm and charisma to disarm them, to gain their trust. Once inside the walls of my house, my true nature would emerge. I would dispose of their bodies, burying them in the crawl space beneath my house.
As the body count grew, so too did the stench of death that permeated the house on Summerdale Avenue. Neighbors complained of a foul odor, attributing it to plumbing problems or dead animals. The nightmare was only just beginning. As John Wayne Gacy's dark urges intensified, so too did his methods become more brazen. He didn't limit himself to chance encounters at the bus station. Gacy was a predator who knew his hunting grounds. He frequented Chicago's bustling Bughouse Square, a magnet for lost and vulnerable young men drawn to its promise of cheap thrills and fleeting connections.
Hiding my true nature behind a mask of affability, I would often prowl the square in my van, offering rides, employment at my construction company, or simply a listening ear to troubled young men. Many were drawn to my seemingly genuine concern, unaware that they were being sized up by a predator, their vulnerabilities assessed, their fates sealed with a smile and a handshake.
His victims often shared similar profiles, teenagers or young men, often from broken homes or facing financial hardship, seeking acceptance, work, or simply a place to belong. They were drawn to Gacy's charisma, his promises of a brighter future, his air of authority and success. They saw in him a father figure, a mentor, a friend. They were tragically mistaken.
My confidence as a predator grew with each passing victim. I became bolder, my crimes more frequent, my methods more refined. I often lured my victims with the promise of work, exploiting their financial desperation. I would then invite them back to my house, offering them a beer, a place to sleep, a sense of security that would prove to be tragically illusory.
Each victim who crossed paths with John Wayne Gacy had a name, a story, a life tragically cut short. John Butkovich, a promising 17-year-old athlete, vanished after confronting Gacy about overdue wages. Billy Carroll, a free-spirited 20-year-old hitchhiker, disappeared after accepting a ride from Gacy. Randall Reffitt, a 15-year-old runaway, vanished after encountering Gacy at a downtown arcade.
These were just a few of the faces lost to Gacy's darkness. Each disappearance left behind shattered families and unanswered questions.
The crawl space beneath Gacy's house became a macabre graveyard, the air thick with the stench of decay.
Yet, Gacy maintained his facade of normalcy, hosting campaign events and bringing joy to children as Pogo the Clown.
Despite his meticulous planning, John Wayne Gacy's crimes did not go unnoticed. Whispers of his strange behavior and the presence of young men at his house circulated. Neighbors saw him burning trash at night, the smell heavy in the air. There were even close calls. One young man reported an assault to the police, but his story was dismissed. Gacy's charm and standing in the community shielded him from scrutiny. Authorities began connecting the dots, leading them to the horrifying truth. The monster, hiding in plain sight, was about to be unmasked. December 11th, 1978. A cold wind whipped through Des Plaines, Illinois. Robert Peast, a bright 15-year-old, vanished without a trace. He was last seen at the pharmacy where he worked part-time. His disappearance sparked immediate alarm. The investigation quickly led to John Wayne Gacy. Witnesses remembered Robert mentioning a contractor matching Gacy's description. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. As the police delved deeper into John Wayne Gacy's life, the carefully constructed facade he had built over the years began to crumble. His clean record, meticulously maintained to deflect suspicion, proved to be an illusion, a flimsy veil concealing a dark past. A routine background check revealed his previous conviction for sexual assault, a chilling reminder of his capacity for violence and deception. The investigation intensified, a net of suspicion tightening around Gacy. The police placed him under 24/7 surveillance, their eyes following his every move, their suspicions growing with each passing hour. They watched as he went about his daily routine, the seemingly upstanding citizen, the friendly face in the neighborhood, all the while hiding a horrifying secret beneath his carefully cultivated persona.
Gacy, sensing the walls closing in, tried to maintain his composure, but cracks began to appear in his carefully constructed facade. His confidence wavered, his charm losing its potency, his words laced with a nervous energy he couldn't quite conceal. He knew the police were on to him, but he clung to the hope that they wouldn't find the evidence they needed, the evidence that would seal his fate. Meanwhile, the police obtained a search warrant for Gacy's house at 8213 Somerdale Avenue. They had no idea of the full horror that awaited them, the unimaginable truth that lay hidden beneath the floorboards of that seemingly ordinary suburban home. They were about to step into a nightmare, a scene that would etch itself into their memories forever, a gruesome testament to the depths of human depravity.
Section 3. Unveiling the House of Horrors. The search of John Wayne Gacy's house began like any other. A systematic sweep for clues, but a chilling realization dawned on them.
A pungent, unmistakable odor hung heavy in the air.
The source led them to the crawl space. As they pried open the door, the full horror was unleashed. It was a mass grave, a tomb filled with bodies.
The officers were stunned into silence. This was no ordinary crime scene. It was a house of horrors.
As the horrifying tableau within his home came to light, John Wayne Gacy's carefully crafted mask of normalcy finally shattered, revealing the monster beneath. The charming businessman, the devoted community member, the friendly clown, all these carefully constructed facades crumbled, leaving behind a cold, calculating killer confronted with the undeniable evidence of his horrific crimes.
Gone was the jovial facade, the easy smile, the disarming charm that had lulled so many into a false sense of security. In its place was a chilling detachment, a cold, calculating demeanor that sent chills down the spines of the seasoned detectives who questioned me.
The monster, no longer able to hide behind his carefully constructed persona, stood exposed, his true nature laid bare for the world to see. Initially, Gacy attempted to deny any involvement in the disappearances, clinging to the hope that he could somehow explain away the gruesome discoveries in his home. He feigned ignorance, claiming that he had no knowledge of the bodies buried beneath his house. He attempted to deflect blame, suggesting that others must have been involved, that he was the victim of a conspiracy.
However, as the evidence against me mounted, as the sheer scale of my crimes became impossible to deny, my facade began to crack. My denials grew less convincing, my words laced with desperation, my eyes betraying a flicker of fear that I could no longer conceal.
The mask had slipped, revealing the cold, calculating mind of a killer. As the interrogation wore on, John Wayne Gacy began to offer a series of chilling confessions. He admitted to luring young men to his home, overpowering and killing them, and burying their bodies in the crawl space. His words, devoid of remorse, painted a horrifying picture of a man consumed by twisted desires.
I attempted to rationalize my behavior, offering twisted justifications that highlighted my lack of remorse. I claimed my victims were runaways and transients, deserving of their fate.
He spoke of his victims with chilling detachment, referring to them as objects to be disposed of. Throughout his confessions and subsequent trial, John Wayne Gacy remained a chilling enigma, a man capable of both cold-blooded calculation and moments of apparent vulnerability. On rare occasions, a flicker of something resembling remorse would break through the facade, a fleeting glimpse into the tortured psyche of a man who had committed unspeakable acts.
I never intended for things to go so far. It was a momentary lapse in judgment, a descent into madness that I couldn't control.
He would speak of the victims' families, expressing a detached sympathy for their loss, yet seemingly unable to fully grasp the depth of their pain. These fleeting moments of apparent remorse, however, were always overshadowed by Gacy's overwhelming narcissism and his desperate need to control the narrative.
I feel for the families, really, but you have to understand, I was not in my right mind.
Whether these glimpses of remorse were genuine or simply another layer of manipulation, a calculated attempt to elicit sympathy and portray himself in a more favorable light, remains a subject of debate to this day. Regardless of their authenticity, these fleeting moments did little to mitigate the horror of his crimes or to lessen the profound impact of his actions on the lives of his victims and their families. The monster, for all his attempts to rationalize and justify his behavior, stood exposed, his legacy forever intertwined with the darkness he had unleashed upon the world. The trial of John Wayne Gacy was a media spectacle, captivating and horrifying the nation. The evidence was overwhelming. 29 bodies exhumed from his home, chilling testimonies, and his own confessions.
I plead not guilty by reason of insanity. It was Pogo the Clown, my alter ego, who committed the murders.
He attempted to charm the jury, claiming he was a victim of his own fractured psyche. However, the jury saw through his charade and returned with a guilty verdict.
John Wayne Gacy, you are sentenced to death.
Gacy showed little emotion as the sentence was read. His fate was sealed. John Wayne Gacy spent 14 years on death row at Menard Correctional Center in Illinois. His time behind bars was marked by a strange duality, a bizarre mix of grandiosity and resignation. He continued to paint, his artwork often depicting clowns and other grotesque figures.
I'm innocent. This is all a conspiracy against me.
He granted numerous interviews, his words a bizarre mix of self-pity and defiance. He enjoyed notoriety among true crime enthusiasts, his letters and phone calls becoming prized possessions. In the end, John Wayne Gacy died as he had lived, a master manipulator, a skilled performer. On May 10, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His death marked the end of a chapter in American criminal history, but the scars left by his crimes continue to haunt us today. The house on Summerdale Avenue, a silent testament to unimaginable horror, was demolished. But the legacy of John Wayne Gacy extends far beyond the physical space of that house. His crimes forced us to confront the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Gacy's case highlighted the vulnerabilities of young people living on the margins of society. It exposed the systemic failures that allowed him to operate with impunity for so long. His story serves as a chilling reminder that evil can wear many faces. It is a reminder to be vigilant and to trust our instincts.